What day?
If you want to go ahead and start the 1 minute early diff, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for coming to this Q&A. It's a little bit
Hello,
earlier.
everybody.
Yeah, a little bit earlier than what I would have normally liked to do, but, well, I'm going to be busy in the latter half of this month, so we're doing it today instead.
But I'm sure many people have questions anyway. That's why we are doing this now. So, what do you want to talk about before we are starting answering questions? Is there something you want to speak about, Div? Jan? Jan?
No. I think we just jump straight into the questions.
There's things I want to speak about, but can't, of course.
The classic.
Well, if we don't have any free talk, maybe yes. Let's start with the questions. Wigbert, what is the first question?
The first set of questions is from Free Jones. The first question being, will more permanent ships be added beyond event bells, metagame story rewards, and those commissioned by each month's nation? More simply, or new bells simply awaken periodically?
Yeah. I mean, if I understand the sort of the question, that it's being asked is, are there other sources of bells beyond events, metagame, and what the nations are commissioning?
Yes.
And I think the event bells are the ones that we're kind of going like, hey, these need to be in the game. So I can't think of any other source beyond those three vectors. I mean, maybe if we do a collaboration, or maybe if we do some other contest or something, then you might see a vector that way. But otherwise, no. Just I think that's it.
Okay. Their second question is, you have stated in the past that weekly reports have some amount of fog of war in them. Can you clarify to what degree this will ever reach? Should players be wary that these reports may be completely false at some times?
It's an interesting situation, right? Because everybody can read each other's reports, and they, sort of know things or do not know things based on how close they've read. But the sort of the quote unquote real information is out there, and it can't really be hidden, right?
Mm-hmm.
The war rooms have a reputation for leaking, right? So in that regard, I would say that yes, from time to time, you will find that reports or the speculation within those reports, isn't correct. And you guys have already seen instances of that, like where clearly that's not true, but yet that's what the report says. As to whether or not it would reach like an outright lie, I guess I could see situations in which that could happen. Jang, you have any thoughts about that one?
Well, yeah, and I kicked this thought over to you earlier. It would be counterproductive to have certain war plans be complete lies from all perspectives, because that would call all the others into question, and kind of devalue the speculative element of it. But yeah, as you say, people are going to have different perspectives and different access to how one or another front of the war is playing out. So, there's never going to be anything in there, to my knowledge, that one or another faction can't math out in the war rooms. I think there's an interesting there's an interesting sort of manifestation of this. There was an early draft of the end of September war plans in like the fourth cycle, where each faction, like each country's war plans would have told the people of that country, oh, this battle was fought and it was the greatest and first like battle of the war, right? Because that's how every country would have sold it to their public, So certainly you'll get some skewed perspectives, but nothing that's outright a lie.
All right. Moving on to the next question from Viofin. How will ships that have been sunk, scrapped, or canceled prior to the beginning of the war in 1939 be implemented, if at all?
Recruit has entered the chat.
Yeah, I think Recruit kind of shows you that it is possible. But as those of you that have, that are in like, Britain or Italy know, or the nations are only accepting stuff that's in commission. And generally speaking, I mean, the metagame is only going to give you stuff that's strictly speaking, in commission. There will be some exceptions. There already have been opportunities to have exceptions. Nobody took those, but there have been some possibilities. Generally, we're open. If a belle, gains consciousness and she happens to be at the bottom of the ocean, it's going to be a bad day for her. But otherwise, there's nothing, strictly speaking, that would prevent it from happening within what is known in 1939 of how bells awakened to begin with.
Anything to add there, Jake?
Well, it's similar to the previous question about will new bells simply awaken periodically? Canonically, many have. You have Constitution, you have Constellation, you have Victory, and we just haven't seen them in the game. Whether that will change depends on there's player input. There's a lot of factors that go into it.
Yeah. All right.
So next we have questions about bells that may appear. Will Texas be getting a 6-gauge double-barreled shotgun like a first captain had on board her in real life? I have not understood a thing in this question, which was submitted by Alex 16634.
Well, I think there is no Texas in the game, and so as a consequence, I don't know what you're talking about.
And supposedly there's a Texas or any other ship. Will they come with this 6-gauge double-barrel shotgun? Yes, no, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, we there's just no way we could comment on some sort of hypothetical ship. I mean, come on.
That means that the next question will have almost the same answer. Will both New York and Texas, if they appear, receive a training buff as they were used during interwar and even during active duty as training ships to train personnel?
Yeah, so for 2 and 3, both of these are kind of like similar. So Alex, we don't have like buy bell bonuses. Like there's nothing particular to Texas or nothing particular to New York that would make them stand out from any other standard battleship or any other nation's battleship for that matter. Barring what historically they had in terms of equipment. Now, early on, we did look at having the bells have certain traits, that were unique to them based on sort of their experience or personality or so on and so forth. But we ended up doing away with it simply because it would create its own kind of meta. And we wanted, to the degree reasonable, you guys to be able to select the bell that you really liked and have her sort of become the peak, at least amongst that class, amongst your stable. There's still some work to do there to like achieve that vision, but yeah, I don't think that we're gonna likely put in bell specific traits, at least not anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, that argument could be made from many angles, right? Why doesn't Queen Mary give like a personnel bonus inherently? She's a troop transport, right? There's a little for training bonuses and such. There's the training ships in the game. It's more class dependent than it is like individual bell dependent. And we're looking at having more options on that front, of course, way down the road, related to a future question.
All right, then. And for those listening in, the third question that was referred to is just asking if they would have an accuracy buff compared to other U.S. battleships. So we'll skip ahead to the fourth one, where they both have radar, hypothetically speaking. If Texas ever exists, of course.
Yes, if New York or Texas were to ever hypothetically exist, they would have radars installed that were appropriate for the time, that they would appear. Both of them were quite famously involved in the testing of early radars, and both of those radars were terrible. And if you want them, if they appear in the right time frame, you'll have some radars that wheel out on deck, and you just point them where you want to look, and there you go. Congratulations.
All right. Moving on to the next set of questions, which are from Stray Cat. The first one is there really some bad mechanic that will come to haunt me if I romance many bells? I only ask because when I romance, I get the opportunity to also play through the friendship story, but the reverse is not an option.
We really want bad consequences to happen because of jealous bells. But I don't think we're going to take away anybody's harem. So I think you're pretty safe there, Kat. Romance away.
As funny as it would be to have Surcouf and Ettore Ferramosca, right, be territorial about you, yes, they can exist in the same space. Romances with those.
All right, and the second question is: late starters like me are really hurting for another training ship beyond recruit. Will there be an opportunity before too long for us to snag one?
Sure.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, at first, it depends on your definition of too long. We would like to see training vessels for each of the nations, the major naval nations, sort of independently. So what do we got? We got recruit. We've got Italy. We've got France. So we need 4 more. But when they come and sort of like where in the time frame they come, yeah, it might be interesting. It might be worthwhile to have some of the trainers like pop back in just to say hello to the newbies. So it's a good point. It's worth thinking. I'll take that back to the marketing game.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
Moving
for
on.
the next
You go ahead.
for the next question, thanks. So from Solhurt, I hope I pronounced that right. Some of you may know that during the previous week, Italy had to destroy during its warplane the Palace of Vanities. And are there considerations for turning past heroic battles, such as Tour de Cordouan or Palace of the Vanities, or future heroic battles as huge-scale events with unique rewards?
Yeah. Obviously, those happen in the past, so revisiting them, like in the context of the narrative that's happening right now, I don't think that would happen. But Solhard, I think you have it right in terms of where we see the future of events going, where you're actually going through some of these notable heroic battles. Now, one issue that comes about, of course, is that the war is very much determined by the choices that you make. So anytime we're thinking about events, right, you're kind of in a space where, well, you have like a week to turn it around, right? And obviously you can't do that, right? You can't. That wouldn't work for testing. So there might be some like historical kind of library record view where you get to learn more about these battles and, to your point, get some unique rewards. I think that would be fun. I think that would be very cool.
All right, then. Moving on to Briberia, who sent in the next question. Will we ever be seeing bells from the independent Asian navies like China and Thailand? Will they have their own minor flag like Poland, Spain, and Turkey? Or is it possible that they could be included with the Japanese tree? And then I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce any of these. So,
well, we'd like to, and some of those conversations have been had about what we would include if we could, right? But again, so much of it is metagame driven.
Yeah, they would have their own flags just as everybody else. China, of course, doesn't have a navy at this time, or rather, they have river gunboats that are all the way. They're very far from the ocean. There are, to your point, some light cruiser class ships that the Japanese are, I don't know, they're using for barracks, right, or training or something. It's certainly possible for things like that to pop in. But yeah, if we did bring in, the Thai navies or anybody else, any other minor navy, they would get their own flag.
Okay, then.
That'll apply for any of the future minors. It's not just Asian ones. Yeah.
Okay, then. Next question from Mike Lima, 777. Do you know if the devs ever explain how they determine the bell height? Like why some official, like why Endeavour is so big and Polar so small?
Comedy. There is no formula. There's no There's no formula. There's no relation to the whole type of the bell, to her draft displacement, whatever. Many of them are average female height for wherever they happen to be from in the 1930s, 1940s. Deviations from there depend on personality and various other indeed arbitrary factors.
So it's just purely comedy. There you go.
Basically, that is where it started. The tallest and the shortest, and from there, populating the rest was a passion project from there.
There we go. Moving on to Cervantes, who sent in the next questions. For number one, if enough moves were made in-game for a U.S.-Japan alliance in the Pacific, would it show up as a major faction alongside the Allies' Axis and Comintern?
I think we're open to maneuvers from most anybody that might alter circumstances in a way that was generally historically plausible. Certainly, the British and the Japanese had a historical alliance, and at various points, U.S. and Japan had commercial treaties and some definite friendship, right? So, is it possible for that to return? Sure. Is it possible for that to return with the situation in China? Well, that's another matter altogether. It would really depend on what other factors were going on in the parallel war with the Morganas.
Anything to add, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly alliances, and certainly there's certainly alliances, certainly geopolitical orientations that are just like wildly in the realm of fantasy, but there's certain ones that aren't as Diff said. I'll just add that I don't know about a major faction, i.e., Allies, Axis, Comintern. Because you think of the balancing that goes into charting out a set of missions and rewards for players to access in a balanced fashion. Right? You'd have to ensure that whatever showed up alongside the existing three factions were commensurate with what we have right now. If not replace one or another entirely.
Yeah. All right. And their second question is: does Avarice like waffles?
Nobody has served her any.
Well, that's not totally true. She really has acquired a taste for Comrade waffles. But other than that, no, I don't think it's known.
Of course. Someone have to start real waffles at some point.
It's a long war.
The next question's from Nell. Is there a reason why some stat bonuses don't stack per gun? Example being hull points when putting more than one on a slot. Also, will there be more equipment with unique perks released in the future, or old unique perks released on new gear later on?
Is there a reason why they don't stack? Yeah, because you could put like 20 guns in a mount. So you could really do some fun and interesting things. And I guess basically, the choice early on that we made was, do we want this to be battery representative, or do we want it to be based on, the number of guns in the battery? And I think we decided on, and no, it's just per the battery. There's nothing to prevent us from doing it by gun. It's just, you'd have to divide all your existing bonuses by, I don't know, 20, right? And so that you didn't wind up with, something truly OP.
True.
As to the second part with the more equipment with unique perks and so on and so forth, you guys probably have noticed that families of equipment tend to share the same perk unless it represented like a sea change in thinking and so on and so forth. So I think in general, anytime you're getting new equipment, it's going to have its own new perk. And if you're getting like a variation of existing equipment, then you can probably be more or less, expecting that that's going to be the same quirk as the basic equipment had.
Yeah. All right, then. Next question is from Oru. They asked, could we get something like favorites or presets for fleets? Something that lets us save our favorite teams and swap to them easily if the bells are available.
Yeah, that's been a fan request, I think, for a little while. I think I mentioned that we have it in our minds that we're probably going to expand the number of fleets that you can have. So when we go touch the fleet system, we'll probably be looking at a couple of these sort of quality of life ads. If it's not, too difficult, then sure, yeah.
Okay. Next set of questions are from Wellington. Go ahead, Elsia. You can handle them.
Well, from Wellington, what benefits and drawbacks do heroic battles or victories and heroic defeats incur? And what is better, an heroic battle or an heroic victory?
I think you guys have already seen the benefits and drawbacks of participating or not participating in a heroic battle in the shape and form of the bonuses. These represent sort of landmark battles, and in some ways chart the course of your nation's strategy at sea and the enemy's strategy at sea. So they're pretty tremendously, impactful in the same way that most any significant battle, naval battle in World War II was impactful and decisive in terms of, what are people going to do next? But yeah, I think you can already see the bonuses. Those bonuses go in there. Heroic battle versus heroic victory. I think when we were first drafting the heroic battles, we just left it in as heroic battle, but what we meant to say was heroic victory or heroic defeat if you didn't show up or you lost. So heroic battle is sort of the thing, but the two outcomes are what should really be in the reports.
I see. Then let's go to the next question from Wellington. As you may know, for the nation that is first in the leaderboard gets to add a new ship to the game. So for now, Italy and UK. So once the nation's pick of bell is taken by BCS to work on by the dev team, do the respective nation get any further updates of them prior to game release, or are they kept in the dark?
So unless I'm much mistaken, there would be specific point people consulting on the ship in question rather than the nation at large. Do I have that right, Diff?
It's actually a Yami question. I'm not totally sure, but I think it is as you described.
I can confirm it actually.
Oh, well
one
then,
of those
all right.
point people. So yes, currently as it works, it's just several point people who are further updated on that, not the entire nation.
And will you keep the update going during the time it takes to create the bell, or just from time to time, or like just at the beginning?
Periodically, but in more of a consultative than a collaborative fashion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, in my experience, it's more of been of this is what we are changing. Is this fine with you?
Correct.
Not a. Do you have any suggestions on what to do in X, Y, or Z?
Well, if we watch what's happening in different war room, you'll understand why it's better that way. With what's happening there, yeah, all the discussions. To say it politely. So let's go to the next question, which is related to this one. Once the bell is finished, will she be an event bell, or will she be a core bell, a bell that is available at all time?
I think it's going to be a mixture of both. So probably she'll land with an event, and then directly after the event, she'll become a core on an existing campaign. That's how I understand it. The second part of this, which is, will the respective nation get her like immediately, or do they have to grind? The answer is you have to grind. You'll either have to hunt her in the event campaign, or you'll have to hunt her in the core campaign after.
Well, we need to work for it after all. France will get its way once, I hope, maybe someday.
I mean,
well,
you know, you're back at number 6, right?
But at what cost?
You'll be before us, Alicia. You'll be before us.
Well, let's go to the next question from Silent Helios. What gets added to the score?
Oh, that was a timely question. You know, so Silent, I'm actually not exactly read in on the precise formula, but it is how much experience that you're accruing and how many victory points that you are delivering. So when you see nations zoom up or down, you can really interpret that as a function of the average, right, amount of activity within that particular room. So if, you know, the U.S. goes down and Germany zoomed up, that is almost certainly to be either the USN relaxed, you know, sort of its activity and the Germans increase theirs, or the Germans really, really focused on, you know, gaining XP and delivering victory points. But it's not the function of any given individual. You need the majority of your nation to really rack up points.
So let's get going, boys and girls.
Yeah, Italy, just keep doing whatever you're doing currently. Seems to be working for us pretty well.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to say that, Elsie, I just checked, and France is number 7 now. Sorry.
Oof.
Okay. We'll get back. We get our turn.
That's sad reveal. We'll move on to the next question. Will more
Oh,
slots
you
be
know,
added?
as a funny aside for all the Soviet players, you guys were 7 for so long. What was it in the war results link that we had? Like, even though you were number 6, like you were still number 7. That's just straight copy paste because you guys were 7 so long. Sorry about that. Go on, Wigbert.
It's fine.
Will more slots be added later for more equipment, like surface search radars, as in general surface search sets, to be specific, and more depth charge throwers?
Yeah. So I don't know where we'd put it, but yeah, surface search radar. Its function is already in the game. If you have a fire control radar, it actually doubles as a surface search radar. They just don't have sufficient range for it to really be interesting on the campaign map. But we definitely need some sort of superstructure slot where you can tack, you know, all kinds of interesting things like that come up, you know, the later on we go. As to the throwers, so the whole quarterdeck installation is actually made up of rails and throwers. We just don't let you customize, right, their numbers or you know, the number of tracks that you have or anything like that. It's just inherent to the equipment property. But yeah, we actually already do model the throwers, and that's how you get the pattern, whether straight or dispersed, you know, etc. But yeah, generally speaking, will you see more slots appear? Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Especially, I imagine, once R&D 2.0 comes out, whenever that is.
Oh yeah, crafting 2.0. Yeah, that's a different system. Yes.
But that is the final question that was sent in before this happened, so we'll move on to the ones that we've been recording, that we've been seeing in the chat room. Next one is from Mysteria. When balancing, do the devs balance statistics for gameplay around best possible gear or average or a different metric entirely? For example, when looking at how accurate bells are in combat, is the measuring stick tried and true plus best possible director and range keeper, or do you measure difficulty with a lower value than absolute best possible gear?
Yeah, so I don't fully know all of the balancing answers, but I can say that it really just depends on the expected gameplay mode and the expected level of the player. So when they're putting together things and determining, like, the curves of difficulty and that sort of thing, did have it proceed from low levels up to high levels, and the higher you go, the greater the expectation is that you will have invested in improvements into your equipment and the improvement of your bell via vesters and that sort of thing. So I think it's more of like a sliding scale what they introduce as far as balancing goes.
Okay. And the next question's from Incenda's Twitch chat. Will we see stuff like crew or vestures in the League of Nations diplomacy shop?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you already see vesters there, right? Can't you get?
If you buy the convoys, they come with a few.
Oh yeah,
vestures.
Yeah. I think the diplomatic stores are where you're going to see like some specialty equipment that, especially from the ranking perspective, appeared earlier and now is kind of popping into the game. Expect some time for players who won that to be able to play with it, but eventually when it gets into the game, yeah, you'll see that kind of stuff feed through the diplomatic store, I bet.
Okay. Next one is from Urza. How do y'all decide what the resource yields are for the various sorties when cruising? Side note, it's kind of odd that Oil Harvest is not the highest yielding oil cruise.
Yeah, and this I can answer. Flavor is a big part of it. I mean, flavor does a rough cut of the problem, right? Okay, this seems like it should have oil. This seems like it should have personnel, given this a high population area. Rare earth metals come from this area. But it's tempered, of course, by the need to balance the distribution thereof. And of course, the fact of Oil Harvest not being the highest yielding oil cruise, that speaks to other parameters at work that I am not nearly good enough at math to explain.
My answer was going to be, first we take a look at what Urza's low on, and then we reduce it.
Of course.
Sadly,
Real way of doing it.
Cenk gave the real answer before I could do it.
Well, player bias is one such parameter.
The next set is from our good friend Jabba. Is Recruit meant to have her wood hull 1-to-1 replaced with compound armor and or mild steel as of the latest patch?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, then he linked something.
But see, when Jabba asked that question, suddenly I'm like, well, but why do you ask that question?
I'll send you the thing he linked so you can
Oh, okay.
look at that properly and see if something weird.
It's
going on
purely the power of will from Recruit to save the world even better.
I do think that there's a world in which we need to give you the option to up armor or change out the armor on your bells, but we'd have to get into all kinds of interesting weight calculations for that.
But I sent you the screenshot, Div.
Okay, good.
So you can look at that later. And the second question is, how do different aircraft of the same type, example a mix of A5Ms and F3Fs, play into air combat mechanics? Is each treated with their own actual stats, or are the lowest stats used like Wind Scouts? Or like with Scouts, excuse me.
They use their own stats.
Okay. Next one that I see is from Air Castle. How will significant retrofits be handled in game? Such as we have Chiyoda, who eventually becomes a CVL in our world. Is there going to be an event where she becomes a CVL in VB as well?
I don't think that we would do that or handle that as an event. What we would prefer to do is give you the tools where you could take Chioda yourself and give her a deck, right? And fly planes off of it, so on and so forth. Now, if we don't get there, or that doesn't make sense for whatever reason, then I could see us doing some form of a variant, right, with Chioda, which you would then pick up and could use her as a CVL. But yeah, I think the better way or the best way would be to give you the tools to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Next set of questions I see are from Calc. Are the Conquest maps going to stay the same all the way to 1946?
I assume that what's meant by that is the core campaigns.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to keep them in their exact form until 1946? Probably not. But at the same time, the reason why core maps exist is because they're dependable, right? And anyone who wants to level at any particular range can always do so right off those maps if the event campaign maps don't support your preferred playstyle or anything like that. So I think our feeling is that they're probably going to have some significant longevity. And if and when they do change, it might just be sort of the text, sort of the description of what's going on in that area of the sea at that particular time. But I doubt that we'll make significant changes.
Okay. Their next question is there a way currently for players not in the Discord to see the war reports?
Well, sure. I mean, the link is in game, right? They have to click on it and leave the game in order to go there. But there's no clean way at the moment, right, to directly show them the results of the war. We've got some ideas in that regard. I mean, we've got some really fun ideas in that regard, but not a priority.
Okay. And do the effects at the bottom of the war reports fade over time, or are they permanent until we do something about them?
Some fade. I think you guys have seen like the national moods that cropped up. They just appeared for kind of 1 week and then they disappeared. So some will fade, but in general, if a problem has arisen, it's unlikely to cure itself.
Okay. So you're not going to see them Morganas randomly just disappear from an area they're ravaging at an amount of time. Yeah. Let's see. Next one that I see is from Daniel. Do we need to protect the Marine Corps' crown stores based on murder, seemingly trying to act like a Marine?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, for sure.
Put those under most top secret protection available.
Jabba Jabba Jibby Jibby asks, are there plans to add some visual indicators for Boss Morganas and their unique abilities? Yes, Sin takes off her shoes.
Oh.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they had some sort of a border or potentially effect. I can say that we've talked about it and discussed it internally, but I just don't think it's high on the list right now.
I see another one we missed.
Several people are typing.
Yeah, will the prestige cell return, and if yes, at what intervals? Or do you even know yet when you're going to rerun it, that sort of thing?
That is all marketing. I mean, I'm positive that a sale will happen at some point, right? But I couldn't even begin to speculate as to when that would be.
And another one I see that we've missed is, will it be announced if a Belle/Morgana receives their voice in a future update, or will it be left discreet?
Oh, I think we'd announce it unless we forget.
Always a possibility, I'm sure.
Right. It's so obvious to everybody that we just forget to put it in the notes. I mean, it's happened before.
Let's see. Will there be a change to the way vestures are spent to acquire bells? Could we unlock the bell by spending vestures and freeing up the vestures for auto selection and promotion without rescuing them and losing a dock slot?
Yeah, I seem to recall someone tossing a just suggestion that exact thing earlier. Yeah, it's a good idea, right? Like I've got 80 Vesters, but I only need 40 to unlock her. Yet I can't spend the other 40 automatically because the game thinks that I've got to preserve those. It's just pure logic about how it considers what's available. So it's definitely possible. But once again, as with all things, right? Like it's just a matter of priority.
Yeah. Let's see, Sylvantes wants to know who your favorite bell is, Diff.
Oh, yeah, I think I've said this before, but I'm partial to Lampo. Although more recently, I think Provence is really cool. Like I love that design and the character.
Provence is one of my favorite recent designs, and I'm very, very glad that she's in front of people finally.
Yeah, there are some amazing ones that are coming up too. I mean, not that I'm biased here, but like seriously, wow.
We may just get to see a teaser at the end of this.
I'm excited actually. I don't know what was sent, so I'm eager to see it.
Ruby has asked, will the minor nations get an option to change alliances later down the line if they want to, or will it just be up to the major nations to decide for them?
Yeah, when we put together the minors like way back in the day, it was recognized that if we didn't treat them like they are now, where they map directly to a major alliance, if we didn't do that, then they'd have to get their own plans and whatnot. And although that's really cool and fun, it's also a lot of time, right? Like it's a big step to do that. So as a consequence, they got mapped. Now that do we see an option for, say, for example, Turkey to decouple from Germany and I don't know, join the Allies? I mean, there's some sense that makes. If we do such a thing, I don't think we'd do it for the minors per se. I think we would probably look at it as a more systemic approach and see how it is that bell captains could change who it is that they are associated with. What would that take and what would that look like in the game? So I don't think it would be minor nation exclusive if we allow that to happen.
Okay. Let's see. Next question is: are land-based aircraft being considered being added into the game?
Yeah, we've got all the data for the land base. I don't know how long you've been around, but actually that was an intended feature from the Kickstarter days, to have land-based aircraft. Like you can, I don't think it exists anymore, but on your bases on the map, you could invest in the airfields, right? Back in the day, anyway, and slot them with aircraft, which you could then use on the sortie map. So we have that as a as an idea, as something that we would like to see occur, but not at the top of our stack.
Okay. Let's see. Weevy wants to know, as for major naval events that concern the fate of mini bells like Marcel Kabir or Pearl Harbor, would the player base be able to change enough to avoid these?
This is a really good sort of like entry into kind of what happened in Poland and now what's going to happen with the Winter War, and then in the future what's going to happen at Marcel Kabir or for example the fall of France, et cetera, et cetera. I think you guys probably, I know the Soviet captains have absolutely gone back and looked at chains of events, right, to see what they did, what other people were doing, how they conflicted or did not conflict, and so on and so forth. Let's say that many events, perhaps not all, but many events will be dependent on the war, and they will be dependent on a great many choices, not all of which will be made by your nation, right? And maybe figuring out the levers and sort of deciding how you want to pursue your goal. That's something that maybe any nation would want to invest into. For example, Wigbert, you and I have had discussions, right, about Mussolini, who right now is probably sitting at the height of his powers thanks directly to you guys, right?
We've discussed that, yes.
So, I mean, if you want something to happen, you'll want to think through what were the actual conditions, of the time, and who were these people, and how did they think about things, and then, what is the approach?
You're like this next one, I'm sure. If Java wants to know, do all AP and other base fuse delay shells have the same assumed fuse delay, or does each have its own delay?
I know that the HE all has the exact same delay, but I don't know if the individual, like the AP shells, have their own. Maybe. Let me look.
Something to look into, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but the HEs all share the same delay. I just don't know if the APs do.
Okay. Let's see, Calc wants to know, what is the team prioritizing at the moment?
Oh, Java, the answer is they all share the same. Yeah, it's all the same delay.
There you go.
For every class, well, I mean, they're different between the classes of shells, but all shells have within a certain type, all have the same delay. What is the team prioritizing at the moment? I think the only thing that I could say is what's in the versions document that we do, showing what the next patch is. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about anything outside of that document.
Not at liberty to say, yep. Okay, next one from Games PC Full. They have a question about the Week 10 League of Nations decision. Looks like it was very close voting, 50%. Can we know maybe how close it was? And will that close vote have any consequence except that League of Nations relations minor powers -1?
Yeah, it was super close. Not as close as the Japanese 50%, which I remember was really, really tight. But it was pretty close. I don't remember the specific numbers, but it was like a tiny handful, maybe 7. I don't remember, but it was a very small margin. Does any closed vote have any consequence? Well, I mean, it's a contextual thing, so we understand that it was conflicted and divided. But at the end of the day, we're asking you guys to make a choice. So it's kind of binary. And as to will it have any consequence except League of Nations relations minor powers -1, at this particular moment in 1939, the League of Nations sort of ignoring a full member, bowing to the wishes of an external power, has happened, right? Already, I guess twice actually, and as a consequence, this is a pattern which the minor powers have come to recognize as being perhaps the MO of the League of Nations, and that's, is it the worst thing in the world? Like, will it resonate over time? Yeah, it meant something to a few powers already, some of which you've seen the consequences of, and others of which you will discover as the game goes on.
Wow. See, Strafe wants to know, for the war report, could you put the percentages for the other options when there are more than one?
Yeah, it is possible, but then we'd have to redo sort of the automation on that. It's not impossible. Like somebody else asked, right? You wanted to see all the options, right? Like, so let's say there were two kind of plans that you could pursue. They wanted to see, which was successful from both, right? That's a fair ask. But we'd have to redo the automation, and we haven't done that yet, obviously.
Okay. Waffle wants to know, hypothetically, would coastal defense ships, such as I'm going to presume those are somewhere in the Scandinavia, the two listed, count as BBs? If not, what would they count as in terms of bell type? Same question with Fort Drum.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if they had a designation or not, because the U.S. didn't really invest in them, and I haven't investigated that, or I don't think anybody on the team has investigated that. But probably if they're carrying battleship class weapons, then we would just call them BBs. They're certainly not going to be BCs.
Yeah, and as for Fort Drum, this kind of calls back to the earlier questions during the beta about stationary installations and stone frigates and all that. The general rule that I think the INPF would have settled on at the point we're at in the war, right, is, if it goes to sea, it talks to me, right? So even non-warships like Vespucci Awaken, right? That's, that falls under that umbrella. Their official stance on stationary installations, I think at this point, is be very careful what you wish for.
All right. Back to Jabba. They want to know if the fuse delays are easily adjustable, because he has a lot of numbers for them.
Yeah, it's a static field. So if you have the gun and the shell, then it's just a Control-C, Control-V to change it.
All right, Jabba. You know who to send that info to, so I'm sure you two will have fun later. Pothies wants to know, are you planning to redo mag weight by dynamically calculating from reload time and shell weight?
Yeah, I think this came up last time as well. So I don't know. Many years ago, we had an implementation which did just that. I mean, it was local, right? But it did just that, and you could control your loadout too. Like, I mean, you could pick the number of shells that you wanted to have, and it was pretty cool. But the UI on that was horrendous, and it's still a pretty difficult problem. I do think that it's worthwhile to have it because of the R&D system as it stands today. If I have something with truly horrendous, rate of fire that can only handle, 10 shots, why should I pay for, I don't know, 600, right? Like, well, why do I have to carry that weight? So it makes sense what your ask is. Doing a dynamic calculation in a game of this type is a little bit more involved because the server is part of this whole thing. So could we do it? Yes. Will we do it? I'm not sure. It is desirable though. So I agree with you there.
Salvantos wants to know, when we roll dice for whatever report we're doing, are we rolling against a set difficulty or rolling against a DM rolling as the Morgana?
No, it's a set difficulty.
Okay.
And all your bonuses kind of figure into that base difficulty.
Okay. Alex wants to know, will we get the chance to sell or lease ships to other nations? Example, France sold several old coastal defense battleships to South America, and the U.S. sold Greece a battleship as well.
Yeah, I mean, from a pure plausibility perspective, can't imagine anybody giving up ships, right, in this environment, right? But that doesn't mean that you couldn't have like a diplomatic play or something where you guys as captains try to influence, hey, let's help out, I don't know, Brazil, right, and strengthen the South by selling them a ship. It's a nice way to get a bell down there too. So we're not opposed.
Okay. Next one is from Ruby. If we say start a civil war with your government and you say stand with the government compared to everyone else, are you allowed to stay with the government where everyone else joins the side of the ones that started the civil war? I.e., if you don't agree with, say, Germany splitting two different ways and half going the other, half going the one way, what could you do about that? Do you have the possibility to do something else?
I feel like
go
this. I mean, this. The way that this is modeled in the game, right? There's one Germany, right? There's one Soviet Union. There was one Japan. If there were a significant split in the player base of one or another country, it seems to me that would be difficult to model without having two tracks for a country, right? I think by default we're locked into democratic centralism.
I guess a further exploration of that question would be, say, France falls in the coming months. What do you do with the players of France at that point? Where do they go?
We just delete all their accounts.
Obviously, that's the only real one. Don't lose.
Right. So let's use Vichy France as our test case. I think what I would say in this particular scenario is the French population would, captain by captain, would need to choose whether or not they go into exile and, follow de Gaulle or whomever and stay in the fight, or if they stick with the metropole and follow Pétain in Vichy France.
All right, so it's really probably going to be a more situation by situation basis on this sort of thing.
I would say so.
Okay. Let's see. Next question then is from Free Jones. Can you give us any hint about what direction you want R&D 2.0 to be?
Oh yeah, I could give lots of hints, but I don't know what, if anything, I can say. Yeah, I guess I'd like to say that I'd like crafting to be more visual.
Okay. So a very interesting hint that I'm sure no one will overanalyze at some point. See, WeV wants to know, since this timeline is as dynamic as I understood, would it also mean that some weapon contracts / licenses might change, which could result into some bells being released with equipment different from their historical set?
I think certain bells might have something to say about that.
Yeah, I guess I don't think I've really thought it through, Weavy, in this particular one, but yeah, I mean, I could easily see some of the miners in particular, if certain weapons were available to them that were not available to them historically, would they not have made different choices? And that kind of makes sense. I don't know the degree to which we would get that heavily involved in the planning process because I can't think of an immediate example. But yeah, if it made sense.
Okay. Let's see. Next one that Ruby has asked is, will we be seeing certain bells early depending on what we did on war plans?
Very possibly.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know I've missed this question earlier because I swear I saw it. I believe it was asking something along the lines of, are you planning on doing Christmas via our actual timeline? So, what 2023 or by in-game timeline?
Yeah. So I think you guys have probably already seen that the holidays, at least in terms of like costumes and sort of trappings of the holiday, that's going to be at the in-game time frame, right? So when we talk about Christmas, that's going to be December 25th, 1939. New Year is 1/1/1940. But you can also plausibly expect that when it gets to the real Christmas and New Year and so on and so forth, that we'll be doing something different in terms of the the overall sort of like structure of the game. Like I imagine that what we'll probably do is we'll pause the time during those periods so that we can have a little bit of a look back or celebration or rest and recovery period, what have you. And actually I expect we'll probably do one of those in July.
Okay. For in-game Christmas, as it were.
Yeah, sure.
Let's see. Rory wants to know, can we find a more efficient way to remove active bells if we reach the limit and can't afford to buy more slots?
You kill them.
Yeah,
it's a popular request. Like I don't want to kill my bell. Sure, makes sense. We obviously, we're touching some pretty core systems. We talk about how bells come into and out of sort of the player and what they own and all their stuff and so on and so forth. So we have to be pretty cautious, but yeah, we understand the ask.
Okay. Let's see, next one from Alex again is, can we ask or commission ships through our allied nations, or can we move ships already under construction to an allied nation stockyard to finish construction without interruption? Example being Jean Bart, Colbert, that sort of thing.
If you want to move something, and a decent example of is the American fleet, which is currently without ammo in a foreign port. Gosh, it'd be terrible if something happened to it. That's a decent example. If you want to move something that's effectively, undefended, you'll probably want to commit a fleet or something to that.
Okay, the next one that I see is from Weeb Bias. Have there ever been any points where the devs were surprised by certain choices players took with the war plans?
Oh, sure.
Jank, you want to weigh in on that one?
I was discussing this internally just a few weeks ago, but I don't remember exactly what. Actually, no. You know what? I've had pleasant surprises in terms of what we'd planned and thought out already, dovetailing with certain things, but that would be telling.
Yeah, I will definitely say that there have been a fair number of things that I thought were going to go in a different way, or that players really kind of went after. You can kind of see things sort of spinning into new and interesting directions pretty much in every region of the world. But yeah, I mean, Avarice was one. Anytime you guys get overruled by the silent majority, I'm always a little surprised, because you guys have pretty reasonable arguments for why you choose what you choose.
No one truly understands how the silent majority thinks. It's impossible to know. See, next questions from Apothes. Is there any update on the potential to redo Volume 1 of Story to grind for crew, so that we don't have to kill the bell dozens of times to get the crew in the rescue battle, if you don't want to, pay for the Volume 2?
Yeah, no. First, obviously, everybody should pay for Volume 2. Just, clearly, that's what you must do. But beyond that, touching that is a little bit of surgery, so to speak. And I won't say that we won't do it, but we're going to have to be really careful when we do.
Okay. Oh, I actually made it to the end. Wow, did not expect that. I guess now's a good as time as any to show off the teaser I have been provided, at the very least. So I've been told that I'm allowed to show this. Everyone get ready to see the next big thing. I will, if Garen puts their question in, I'll still ask it after I show this. Don't worry about it.
Oh, it's going to be somebody's feet, isn't it?
It does involve feet, yes. It all.
I knew it. Oh, I know who that is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I hope
this is a fun
so.
one.
It
Oh,
would be a bit strange if you didn't know which one it was.
Oh no, I'm not involved in the art side, so it's totally possible for me to go. Oh, I haven't seen that bell.
yes. I was, several people, I won't say who, have asked me if we would have a reveal, a teaser today, as it were, and I said, not to my knowledge, but I can certainly pass that up the chain. So never let it be said that I don't listen to people's requests. Certainly do. And here you go. This is all because of you. Remember that in the future.
Mm.
Lovely. All right. Well, shall we wrap up there?
Is a release feature for unwanted bells in the works? Oh, that was already asked, Garion, and maybe they'll have to be careful when they work on that. So I believe that question was more along the lines of, can I get rid of bells without having to, kill them?
But same idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Well,
Basically,
everybody have a good weekend. Yeah, we use 0.003 for the HE. But yeah, there are some definite differences. Although, as you guys can probably imagine, we tend to use the U.S. Figures as the standard simply because they're easily available and accessible to us. That's a really long delay. Oh, Japanese players are going to hate it when they overpin all the time. Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. Wow, are you sure you want me to use this? We'll use it. You guys may not like the results, but, well, it's historical. All right, anything else, Wigbert?
one last question from Alex. Can they have an in-game list map instead of having to navigate each map for missions that they can do? And I believe there's already one in-game, Alex. You just have to click on the compass rose on the bottom right-hand side when you're in the
if you go to Sortie and then just hit the compass rose bottom right-hand side, if you touch that, it gives you the list.
And if you are on the war screen, you can directly click on the region or the map to do, and it will bring you automatically there. You don't have to look for it on the globe.
Yeah, that's got a purpose. You should touch everything, Alex. Just touch it and see what happens.
Just
but
because
ask them before if you're willing before, just in case.
Just because I feel bad for the Soviets, we'll ask these last two, and then we'll be done. I promise this time.
All right.
Waffle wants to know when Soyuz is coming out.
Well, I obviously can't comment on the presence or lack of presence of any bell, but I'll suggest two things. First of all, if you want somebody, then you should take a look at your bell unlocks and see if you can guess, and see if you can focus your war plans on that specific area. That will tend to accelerate things. I know the Italians have been trying to get to the Red Sea every time they can.
Yes,
something for that specific reason. And then I won't necessarily say that it's going to be possible because she wasn't in commission, but when it comes your turn to request a bell, it might be possible. Could be possible. We could certainly talk about it.
Yeah, they won without Soyuz, so if you want a nice bonus, you're gonna have to work for it.
That's mean. And the second question from Weeb is, who is the best girl? And obviously the answer is redacted.
Weeb, it's whoever your waifu is the best girl. That's true for everybody.
Well, that's the least provocative and the least dangerous answer you could give.
We're done.
Exactly. Yes, I like Jabba's answer.
All right. Well, thank you for everyone for coming to this extremely shortly planned Q&A that I was not expecting to run today about a week ago. But hey, that's life.
And thank you everybody for asking questions and participating in this Q&A. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe if you... Next one, yes? When will the next one be?
hopefully the next one will have more than a week's notice. I plan on it having more than a week's notice. We'll just have to wait and see. But as usual, I usually try and run these at the end of the end game month, not the end of the real life month.
Sounds good. We'll see you guys then.
Yep.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for Incinda for its technical support. Thank you, Diff and Junken, for your participation today. Thank you, Wigbird, for hosting it with me. And thank you, everybody. I hope we'll see you next time. Have a good day, good night.
Thank you, Elsia, for helping us facilitate.
Yes, thank you all for setting it up.